Good evening, everyone. James Hancock here. I'm back to review episode 10 of season 2 of the Orville, an episode called Blood of Patriots. Now, after the unbelievable intensity of the two-parter Identity, I went into tonight's episode expecting a pretty low-key story, basically a strategic base hit to calm things down a bit after last week's enormous grand slam. And while the story didn't have the soaring ambition and scope of the two-parter Identity, it was still a very satisfying episode. What was interesting was just how much tonight's story recaptured the magic of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, a show where frequently the lines between characters' personal history and complex diplomatic scenarios frequently became blurred, creating these fascinating dramatic conflicts between the characters' personal feelings and their sense of duty. These kind of conflicts where audiences develop their own conflicting feelings toward a complicated problem with multiple points of view are the essence of great sci-fi, a lesson that is sadly frequently lost on lesser writers on other shows. Another interesting development with the show is how even with standalone stories, the Orville now has enough continuity and history where a viewer's familiarity with previous episodes will pay huge dividends. Little details like seeing Yaphet receive a medal for actions against the Kalons just put a huge smile on my face, but I'm loving the evolving relationship with the Krill. It reminds me of a great VHS box set I had back in college that collected all the Star Trek Next Generation episodes featuring the Borg, and I would frequently sit down and watch them all in a row as one giant story. And imagine that now if you sat down and watched all the episodes of the Orville featuring the Krill, it would yield a similarly satisfying story experience. So the story of tonight's episode in broad strokes deals with the Orville's role in shepherding a potential peace treaty with the Krill. Ted Danson returns as Admiral Perry, and he tells Mercer that billions of lives could be saved with the Krill as a potential ally and not to let anything stand in the way of the peace process. But all hell breaks loose when the Orville encounters a Krill shuttle on the run, which crashes into the Orville shuttle bay, and inside they find one of Gordon Malloy's oldest friends, Orin, who saved Malloy's life a long time ago and was imprisoned by the Krill for 20 years. Alongside Orin is his mysterious daughter Lana, who has not spoken in 12 years, and she appears horribly traumatized from all of her time with the Krill. The Krill ambassadors insist that Orin is in possession of a powerful weapon and that he's responsible for violating the ceasefire by killing 1,200 Krill. They give the Orville 12 hours to decide if they wish to hand Orin over to them or resume hostilities. So the episode is certainly rife with conflict. However, there's also no shortage of comedy. When the ambassadors first arrive, Ed asks Tala if she can stall them a little bit while he gathers information on Orin, and watching Tala request urine samples from these majestic Krill in their lavish robes just had me cracking up. The gags continue with Tala and Kelly when they're trying to coax some words out of Lana by playing some music with her, and Tala claims that she practiced her instrument so much as a kid that she never got laid. Kelly kind of nods with her head and says she could probably get laid now, and as the image cuts to Dan, we see him grinning ear to ear, saying, "That was really pretty." Dan is just a comedy goldmine that never gets exhausted, but I almost choked myself unconscious later on in the episode when Dan's talking to this bumpy blue dude about how they need to have a casual day where they all wear t-shirts. I have no idea why, but something about the way the bumpy blue dude was talking, it just got to me, and I was just freaking out. All comedy aside, the main drama of this episode sees Malloy between a rock and a hard place by either remaining loyal to his friend Orin and repaying the debt that he owes, or remaining loyal to his captain and the crew of the Orville. Orin is totally opposed to the peace process, and he wants to disrupt it, and even briefly brings Malloy around to his point of view, creating a rift between Malloy and Mercer. Malloy eventually sits down for a drink with Tala and talks out his predicament, making it clear that he has made his choice, and they cook up this ruse where Malloy will pretend to play along with Orin's plan of stealing a shuttle, where he has some secret plan using missing quantum cells as a potential weapon. And with the Orville tracking the shuttle's every move, Tala confronts Lana, who turns out to be a new race we haven't seen before, an Invol. They're a race whose blood is incredibly explosive when it encounters nitrogen. As we come to learn, Orin has been using her blood as a secret ingredient to manufacture weapons to use against the Krill. Now knowing that Orin's on a suicide mission to stop the peace process, the Orville pursues a shuttle, where inside Orin is being confronted by Malloy. Malloy has this great moment where he acknowledges that war is hell on all sides, but peace is only possible when both sides agree to stop all of their vendettas for past bloodshed. Malloy eventually disables the shuttle and floats off into space in a suit, while Orin remains on board and blows himself up. All's well that ends well, and Malloy is picked up by the Orville, and the peace treaty with the Krill proceeds as planned. What I'd really love to see now is a Krill sent to serve aboard the Orville, preferably Mercer's old girlfriend, but we'll have to wait and see what the future might bring, but I feel like that would be a great way to kind of mix things up with the crew. So I have a bit of bad news. There will be no new episode of the Orville next week, but in 2 weeks we'll be introduced to some mysterious love interest aboard the Orville for Malloy. Something he admitted at the end of tonight's episode is the only thing that might possibly come between him and Mercer, so that should be interesting. I'm still not entirely sure if we're getting 14 or 15 episodes total this season, and I'm having a little trouble verifying it, but the sad reality is that this season is now much closer to the end than the beginning, and we've still had no news about the future of the show. I promise I will weep openly on a live stream for your viewing pleasure on this channel if the show does not continue. But I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up because I got so many nerdy things I still need to do this weekend. I need to do a review of Captain Marvel. I need to do a review of the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery. But more important than all of that, I have pre-ordered Devil May Cry 5 and it goes live in a couple hours and I'm desperate to play it. So trying to get these videos done when a video game is screaming my name is going to be very challenging. In any event, I can't thank you enough for watching this video. I really appreciate the support. Please consider subscribing to my channel. If you want to give me a shout, you can always do so on Twitter at Colbrax. There's a link in the description below. But thanks for listening to my little rant about this show that I love so dearly. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.